before, my name is Onyango, and I will be facilitating the webinar today. This particular session is going to include some aspect about introducing the convening powers, sort of the convening institution called Africa Research and Impact Network, and also focusing a bit on what we mean by decolonizing research in Africa and how that plays into the conversation around challenging research, sort of sustainability research. We'll have a plenary, and I'll introduce our panelists later on, and then we'll share a bit of a wrap-up and next steps, including some launch of our next step of events. So just to go on, ARIN in itself is basically a network that is allowing people to connect and also perpetuate peer learning. And in peer learning here, we are not just focusing on learning from an academic perspective. We are looking at that relationship between research, policy, and practice. There are over 80 fellows at the moment from different African countries, and you can join even from diaspora as long as we are focusing on connection and peer learning within the context of what we are doing now. The network really fosters leveraging of different experiences that we have, of different ideas that we have, so that we are able to have a unified voice and move towards prioritizing what we do in Africa in terms of research, but also in terms of sustainable development. Broadly, ARIN has several thematic disciplines and is using different analytical approaches. And in this space, ideally, is just about opening up the research and policy space that can contribute to us transformative action moving forward. And in this, we are basically having bottom-up approach and conversing about pathways in terms of how they affect methods, looking at how we can inform policy through evidence, but also focusing on spaces that, opportunities for us to open up conversations in the, when talking about pathways. So being a network, we are sort of pushing for co-created way of enhancing leadership, but this space of opening up spaces is where then the need for decolonizing science and decolonizing how we practice science emerges. And what do you mean by decolonizing methods in our context is that we are thinking of basically opening up that space for free thinking, opening up the space so that we can be able to innovate and be able to engage and research effectively. In the broader scheme of things, it almost borders scholarly activism, because we are saying when you have room to critique, when you have room to challenge what is dominant or what is seen as dominant, then you're thinking about decolonizing what has been traditionally been seen as the main thing. And to that effect, we are actually looking at different things. We are looking at decolonizing methods in the sense of opening up the space for talk, so valuing diversity in application of methods, challenging power through methods, and also looking at the ontology and also philosophical underpinnings that are associated with methods, whether you are articulating them, you're integrating them, or you're customizing their application. Of course, that brings the whole idea of research methods being quite multidimensional from practice areas, but also from discipline to another, and there's a lot of complexity around it, even when you talk about transdisciplinary research. Now, this particular webinar is going to focus on challenging power through methods. And when you talk about challenging power through methods, what you're saying is that when you go back to the definition of decoloniality and coloniality, then a lot of things have been associated with, someone ruling over other people. Traditionally, there's the whole idea of colonial countries and subordinate countries, and basically, what we are thinking about decoloniality here is being able to counter these kind of things when you're talking about power and methods, not countering in a negative sense, but being able to counter the conversation in a way that we are having productive sort of step up and challenging incumbent and challenging what has been to make it better and innovate around it. So when you think about challenging power, you're basically saying, how can we have, for example, in this sense, inclusive research that can be able to engage with people on one side, and the other side be able to co-create outputs, to co-produce outputs that can amplify impact, but at the same time also generate more partnerships that are more responsive and be able to promote policy and practice that has a long-term effect. Now, more importantly, we have been struggling with the idea of how do we embed the question around decoloniality, how do we embed the conversation around reflexivity when it comes to methods. And here we try to synthesize what this might look like, because we can have in any discipline, in any power play, in any research agenda, there's always some kind of dominance of who does what and where. But as it goes, there's an opportunity to open up and have a reflexive kind of discussion. At the same time, we can be thinking of coloniality on one end and how that transforms decoloniality and opens the space for free thinking. So when you look at these two things, and you're looking at dominance on one side, and you're looking at coloniality on another, there's a chance of having this like a cyclic thing. So where we have an incumbent that has all the power and absolute power, and this incumbent can also shift power when they're tending towards decoloniality, but they are holding on to a lot of the dominant ideas and dominant thoughts. So it's a step towards thinking about plurality of options when you're thinking about solutions. On the other side, you can also have this coloniality where people are open to contribute, but there's a centrality of who decides on what happens when it comes to methods, when it comes to disciplines, or even promoting that space. But what you're moving towards is actually thinking about decolonizing, but also sort of distributing power, if I could use that. So shifting power to different people to make decisions, to innovate, to have free thinking, and also produce solutions that are context dependent. And when you think about all this, and this centers the conversation you're having today, and our conversation today is actually trying to have a dialogue with different partners, with different practitioners, researchers, and trying to answer the question as to whether there is room for decoloniality in the broader scheme of things, and whether that decoloniality is one of the steps towards challenging power, especially in sustainability research.